I'm Marie Connors Harwood, and I first moved to Brewerton with my family right after World War II. My father sewed emblems on uniforms on the Coast Guard ship to save enough money so that he could buy some property when he was discharged. And they selected Brewerton, New York, which was not too far from my mother's home, where her family lived in West Monroe. And when they bought the lot, there wasn't anything on it at all. It was just like a hay lot. And they built everything from scratch, and I mean scratch. They actually made the cement blocks. They poured them into a mold, and my father had a part-time job, so my mother would spend the day there with my little sister and me. She'd mix the cement in a cement mixer. They had a well, and she'd make sure that there was water and sand in it, mix it together, and pour them into the molds and let them dry. And then she and my dad literally laid the blocks. First they put up a house. And while my dad was still working, my mother would go every day, and she laid all the floors, hardwood floors, in the house herself. With him, my dad would start lining them up. And we moved into the house when it was little more than a shell. After the house was completed, they started work on the diner. This was my father's dream. And they built a little place called the North Brewerton Diner. It was right in front of where the racetrack eventually, or perhaps it was there, I don't remember being there when we first moved. And because there wasn't a concession stand when it first opened, their diner became the concession stand. The race car drivers were there before and after the races, and their big special was the blue plate special, a big fish dinner or whatever was special for the day was served on a blue plate. They were open from 6 a.m. to midnight, and they did most of the work themselves. They had a few people come in. It was very difficult, very hard work. One thing I do remember is that was some pleasure that they had was that my dad had been an amateur boxer during the war, and they had a lightweight bag in the back, and the guys were all kind of showing off, and my mother, who had 12 brothers, was a little bit good at boxing. And she watched them show off one night and stepped up and almost knocked the thing off the hook. And the men just could not believe it, and then walked away in her little blue uniform. It was really something to watch. I think the saddest day in my life was the day we moved away from there. And the day my parents said we were moving, the night before, I kneeled down next to the little blue bunk beds my dad made and prayed that I would be able to come back to Brewerton someday, because I just loved it. I loved my school, and I loved my friends, and it was home. Well, my prayers were answered, but not right away. I was 24 years old, didn't come back as a student to my little one-room schoolhouse. I came back as a teacher, and it was probably the lowest, hardest point in my life when I had to move here. And yet from there, one prayer after another was answered. I met my awesome husband, who's sitting over here. I met him at the United Methodist Church. I was teaching kindergarten there, and he was the bus driver, and I was madly in love with him from first sight. And of course, he asked the other teacher out first. I was crushed, and he doesn't know this, but I deliberately tore a hole in the little bag that they had to take up to the main school with the snack money, so the pennies fell out, and he had to get out and help me. But we've been married 40 years, have 4 beautiful children, all who went to Brewerton Elementary. And it's so wonderful to be home in this community that I love so much.